The female CEO brought her paralyzed son on a blind date, but the single dad's reaction completely stunned her. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The coffee shop door chimed at exactly 2 p.m., and Frank Caldwell's heart stopped. She was here, Diane Winters, the brilliant CEO he'd been texting for 2 weeks, the woman whose messages made him laugh for the first time in 3 years. But she wasn't alone. Frank watched from his corner table as Diane maneuvered through the doorway, her designer heels clicking with determined precision. Behind her, she pushed a wheelchair where a boy sat, maybe 10 years old. His thin legs motionless beneath a Star Wars blanket, his bright eyes scanning the coffee shop like he was mapping escape routes. The entire atmosphere shifted. Conversations stuttered, a woman quickly looked away. A teenager stared openly until his mother smacked his arm. The barista's smile faltered, transforming into that expression Frank knew too well. That toxic mixture of pity and discomfort that people wore like masks when confronted with disability. Diane's jaw tightened. Her fingers whitened as she gripped the wheelchair handles harder. And Frank could see it in every line of her body. She was ready for war, ready for rejection, ready to protect her son from whatever came next. "Adrian, honey, remember what we talked about? We're just stopping by for a minute. Mommy needs to tell someone something important." The boy nodded, but his fingers twisted in his lap. "The man doesn't know about me, does he?" "No, sweetheart, he doesn't."
Frank stood slowly, his mind racing, not with excuses or exit strategies, but with a sudden, overwhelming recognition. He knew that look in Diane's eyes, that defensive armor, that exhausted bravery. He saw it every morning in his own mirror. Diane spotted him and stopped halfway across the coffee shop. Her chin lifted, a challenge. "Come on," her posture said. "Get it over with. Run." They always do. But Frank did something that made her freeze completely. He walked toward them, his eyes never leaving Adrian's face, and when he reached them, he dropped to one knee so he was at Adrian's eye level. "You must be Adrian," Frank said softly, extending his hand to the child first, completely ignoring Diane. "I'm Frank. That's an awesome Star Wars blanket. Is that the Battle of Endor?" Adrian's entire face transformed. His suspicious squint melted into surprise, then bloomed into the kind of smile that could power a small city. "You know about the Battle of Endor?" "Know about it? I built the Lego Death Star with my daughter last month. Took us 3 weeks because her hands don't always cooperate, but we did it. Every single piece." Diane made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Frank finally looked up at her, and that's when she saw them. Tears, actual tears rolling down this stranger's face. But not the tears she'd expected. Not pity, not discomfort. These were tears of recognition, of understanding, of finding someone else who spoke the same unspoken language of hospital waiting rooms and modified everything, and small victories that meant the world. "Hi, Diane," he said, standing but keeping one hand on Adrian's wheelchair like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Would you both like to sit down? I picked this cable specifically because there's plenty of room for a wheelchair. My daughter Susie uses one sometimes, and she hates when restaurants cram them in corners." The words hung in the air, like suspended breath. "Your daughter?" Diane's voice cracked. "Your daughter uses a wheelchair?" "Sometimes. Juvenile arthritis. Progressive. Today's actually a good day. She's at home defeating our neighbor at checkers. She insists on moving the pieces herself, even though it takes forever. The neighbor, Mrs. Chen, pretends not to notice when Susie accidentally knocks over half the board." Frank's smile was soft, private, the smile of a parent who'd learned to find joy in unexpected places. "But you didn't come here to hear about my daughter, or did you?" Diane sank into the chair like her strings had been cut. Her carefully constructed CEO facade, the one that had gotten her through board meetings and hostile takeovers, crumbled completely. "I brought Adrian to scare you away," she whispered. "I know. I've done this 12 times. Frank pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he found the photo. "This is Susie.
The image showed a little girl with Frank's eyes and a grin that could light up the darkness, sitting in a bright purple wheelchair, her arms raised in victory beside a thoroughly destroyed Lego city.
"Did she smash it on purpose?" Adrian asked, leaning forward with interest. "No, that was an accident. She was trying to high-five me after we finished, but her joints locked up mid-celebration. Took out 3 weeks of work in 2 seconds." Frank's laugh held no bitterness. "She cried for about 30 seconds, then said, 'Well, Dad, now we get to build it again, but better.' That's Susie. She finds the silver lining in everything, even when her own body betrays her." Diane's hand covered her mouth. "How long have you been doing this alone?" The question hung between them, loaded with shared understanding. 3 years. Her mother left when Susie's condition got worse. Couldn't handle watching our perfect daughter struggle to tie her shoes. You? 6 years. Adrian's father stayed until he was 4, long enough to realize our son would never play catch in the backyard or run alongside him on morning jogs. He sends checks, generous ones. But checks don't teach a boy how to be brave when kids stare at the playground. Adrian had been listening quietly, but now he tugged on Frank's sleeve. "Does Susie like space?" "I love space. I want to be an astronomer, but Mom worries because some observatories don't have accessibility wheels." "Funny you should mention that. I'm a structural engineer, and I just finished working on the new accessibility renovations at the Richmond Observatory. Every single floor, every telescope station, fully accessible. I made sure of it." "Really?" Adrian's eyes went wide. "You built ramps to the stars?" "Ramps, elevators, wider doorways, adjustable telescope mounts, the works, because everyone deserves to see the stars, wheels or no wheels." Diane watched this stranger, this man she'd met to potentially date, talk to her son like he was the most interesting person in the world. No fake enthusiasm, no performative kindness, just genuine connection. Most people see the chair first. Most people are... Reply. "Sorry, I shouldn't..." "No." Diane laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in months.
The barista appeared with coffee, her discomfort palpable as she navigated around Adrian's wheelchair. Frank noticed Adrian shrink slightly, making himself smaller, apologizing for existing in space. "Hey, Adrian," Frank said casually. "Want to see something cool?" He pulled out his phone again, swiping to a video. It showed Susie in what looked like a gymnasium, her wheelchair decorated with ribbons and lights like a parade float, spinning in circles while other kids in wheelchairs played basketball around her. "Is that wheelchair basketball?" Adrian breathed. "Saturday mornings, 10 o'clock, adaptive sports program at the community center. Susie's terrible at basketball, I mean genuinely awful, but she loves it. They do wheelchair racing too, and volleyball. And sometimes they just have wheelchair dance parties, because why not? Mom, can I?" "We'll see," Diane said automatically, then caught herself. "Actually, no, not we'll see. Yes, if Frank thinks it would be okay, then yes." "More than okay. Susie would love a new friend. She's the only girl in the program right now, but she holds her own. Last week she ran over 3 kids' toes and told them they were moving too slow." Adrian giggled. "She sounds awesome." "She is, but don't tell her I said that. She's already convinced she's invincible." The conversation flowed like water finding its level. Diane told him about the first time someone suggested she should put Adrian in a home for his own good. Frank shared the rage he'd felt when Susie's own grandmother had said she was broken. They compared IEP horror stories and celebrated tiny victories. Adrian's first A in math, Susie painting a sunset despite her stiff fingers. "I run a medical tech startup. We're developing affordable mobility devices for kids, prosthetics that grow with them, wheelchairs that don't cost more than cars. I started it because I got tired of fighting insurance companies for every single thing Adrian needed." "That's incredible. I've been designing accessible playgrounds in my spare time. Haven't built one yet, but I have 17 different plans. Swings that accommodate wheelchairs, sensory gardens for kids with different needs, structures that let kids of all abilities play together, not just alongside each other." 17 plans? Couldn't sleep. Started designing instead of staring at the ceiling, worrying about Susie's future. Plan number 12 is my favorite. It has a rocket ship that's fully accessible. Adrian might like that one. Adrian had pulled out a notebook, sketching something with intense concentration. Diane glanced over and smiled. He's drawing Susie. He always draws new people he likes. It's his way of remembering them. Can I see? Frank asked Adrian directly. The boy showed him shyly. The drawing was remarkable, not just skilled for a 10-year-old, but genuinely artistic. He'd captured something essential about Susie just from the photo, her determined spirit somehow evident in pencil strokes. "You're an artist," Frank said seriously. "This is really good." Kids at school say art is stupid. They say I only draw because I can't play sports. Kids at school are wrong about a lot of things. You know what Susie told a kid who made fun of her wheelchair? What? She said, "I have wheels that help me move. You have a mouth that should help you think before you speak, but we all have equipment that doesn't work sometimes." Adrian laughed so hard he snorted, which made him laugh harder. Diane watched her son, her beautiful, brave boy who'd grown too quiet, too careful, come alive under the attention of this stranger who wasn't really a stranger at all. "I should confess something," Frank said, meeting Diane's eyes. "My sister made my dating profile. I almost canceled today. 3 times, actually." "Why didn't you?" "Because your messages made me remember what it felt like to be just Frank, not just Susie's dad or the guy with the disabled kid. You talked to me like I was a whole person, but I was terrified of telling you about Susie. I planned to wait until the 3rd date, maybe the 4th. I was going to ease you into it like slowly entering cold water. Instead, I threw you into the deep end with a 10-year-old in a wheelchair. Best thing you could have done. I'm terrible at pretending everything's normal when it's not. My version of normal includes knowing which restaurants have accessible bathrooms and carrying a backup set of finger splints in my pocket."
Diane reached across the table, taking his hand. Her fingers were soft but strong, calloused in odd places from pushing Adrian's wheelchair. "I've been on 12 first dates this year," she said. "One man actually asked if Adrian was mentally all there because he assumed paralyzed meant brain damaged. Another said he didn't want to play daddy to a defective kid. The last one, the one I really thought might work, he ghosted me the second I mentioned Adrian's wheelchair. They're lost. You don't even know us." "I know enough." Frank squeezed her hand gently. "I know you're brave enough to bring your son on a first date because protecting him matters more than finding love. I know you started a company to help kids like ours because anger is only useful when you channel it into change. I know you've probably cried in more hospital bathrooms than you can count, but never where Adrian could see. I know you've become an expert in a medical field you never wanted to study. I know you wake up at night wondering if you're enough, if you're doing it right, if your love can make up for all the things you can't fix." Diane's tears came then, silent and steady. "I know," Frank continued, "because I live it too, every single day. And for the first time in 3 years, I'm sitting across from someone who doesn't need me to explain why I know the names of 8 different types of joint inflammation or why I consider it a victory when Susie can button her own coat." "Mom?" Adrian's voice was small. "Are you okay?" "Yes, baby, I'm very okay." "Is Frank why we really came here? Not just to tell him something and leave?" Diane looked at her son, this perceptive child who saw everything, despite, or perhaps because of, his unique perspective on the world. "Yes," she admitted, "Frank is why we came." "Good," Adrian said simply, then turned to Frank. "Are you going to date my mom?"
Frank looked at Adrian, then at Diane, then back to Adrian. "I'd like to get to know both of you better, but that's not just my decision. What do you think?" Adrian considered this seriously. "Do you like Star Trek? The original or Next Generation?" "Next Generation." "Picard was the best captain." "Correct answer." Adrian nodded solemnly. "Do you eat vegetables?" "When forced." "Also correct." "Last question. If someone makes fun of my wheelchair, what would you do?" Frank met the boy's eyes steadily. "Depends. If it's a kid, I'd explain why they're wrong and help them understand better. If it's an adult, I'd use bigger words to explain why they're wrong. And if anyone ever tried to hurt you, wheels or no wheels, they'd have to go through me first." Adrian looked at his mother. "I like him."
Me too, Diane whispered. The coffee shop manager approached their table, apologetic. I'm sorry, but we're closing in about 10 minutes. Frank blinked, checking his phone. They'd been there for 3.5 hours. It felt like minutes and a lifetime simultaneously. I can't believe we've been there that long, Diane said, starting to gather their things. Time flies when you're not explaining why your kid needs extra time for everything, Frank said, helping organize Adrian's backpack that hung on his wheelchair. Or apologizing for existing in spaces not designed for wheels, Diane added. They moved toward the exit, Frank naturally falling into step beside Adrian's wheelchair, his hand occasionally steadying it over the uneven threshold, not taking over, just supporting. Diane noticed. Adrian noticed, too.
Outside, the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. Adrian tilted his face up, eyes closed, soaking in the warmth. Frank and Diane stood quietly, both recognizing the moment. Children like theirs learned to savor simple pleasures because they knew how quickly things could change. So, Diane said, Saturday, the adaptive sports program? 10 o'clock, Building C at the community center. Fair warning, Susie will probably interrogate Adrian about everything from his favorite color to his opinion on whether hot dogs are sandwiches. Hot dogs are definitely not sandwiches, Adrian said firmly. You two are going to get along perfectly. Susie will argue that position for hours. They stood by Diane's adapted van, the one with the wheelchair lift and the proud special needs mom sticker that she'd put on defiantly after someone left a note saying she shouldn't use handicap parking because she could walk. Frank, Diane, started, then stopped. I didn't expect this. Someone to not run? Someone to run toward us instead of away. Frank's phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor. Susie says if you're not home in 20 minutes, she's making cereal for dinner. Again. He showed Diane the message, laughing. She's 8 and thinks she's 18. Last week, she tried to do her own physical therapy exercises and got stuck in a position I can only describe as pretzel meets modern art. Adrian once tried to fix his legs with duct tape and a bicycle pump. The logic was sound if you were 10 and didn't understand paralysis. Our kids are something else. They're everything else.
As Diane loaded Adrian into the van, the boy called out, Frank, will Susie really be there Saturday? Wild horses couldn't keep her away, especially once I tell her she's getting a new friend who likes space and Star Wars. Tell her I think she's brave, Adrian said quietly. For the Lego thing, and the basketball, and everything. I'll tell her. But Adrian, you're brave too. Braver than most adults I know. The boy beamed, and Diane mouthed, thank you over his head. As they drove away, Frank stood in the parking lot, processing what had just happened. His phone rang. His sister, Margaret. So, how did it go? Was she worth the haircut and the nervousness? Margaret, she brought her son. Oh no, she has a kid. You said you were okay with... He's in a wheelchair, paralyzed from spina bifida. Silence. Then, oh, Frank, I'm so sorry. That must have been... Perfect, Frank cut her off. It was perfect, Mags. What? For the first time since Jennifer left, I met someone who didn't need me to explain why I checked my phone constantly for the school nurses' calls. She didn't flinch when I mentioned Susie's chair. She didn't look at me with pity when I talked about joint inflammation. She just understood. Everything. Frank, we're seeing them Saturday, both of them. Susie's going to have a friend, Mags. A real friend who won't exclude her from birthday parties because the parents don't want to deal with her needs. His sister's voice was thick with tears. I'm so happy for you. For both of you. All 4 of you. Frank got home to find Susie on the couch, her legs elevated on special cushions, sketching in her adapted grip pencil holder. How was your date? She asked without looking up. How did you know I had a date? Aunt Margaret can't keep secrets. Also, you're wearing your nice shirt and you smell like cologne instead of industrial drawings."
Frank sat beside her carefully, aware of her tender joints. It was interesting. Bad interesting or good interesting? Good. Very good. She has a son. Susie's face fell slightly. "Oh, he's in a wheelchair." His daughter's head snapped up. "What?" "His name is Adrian. He's 10. He loves space and Star Wars and draws really well. He wants to meet you Saturday at the adaptive program." Susie's eyes went huge. "Another kid like me?" "Not exactly like you. His legs are paralyzed. But yes, another kid who understands." "Does he get stared at?" "Yes." "Does he have to miss fun stuff because places aren't accessible?" "Yes." "Does he hate it when people talk to adults about him like he's not there?" "I'm absolutely certain he does." Susie was quiet for a moment, processing. "And his mom likes you? Even though I'm—" "Because you're exactly who you are. Not despite it, because of it." "Dad?" "Yeah, baby?" "I'm scared." Frank pulled her close gently. "Of what?" "What if they realize we're too complicated? What if Adrian's mom is just being nice? What if they see how hard it is on my bad days and leave like Mom did? Then they wouldn't be worth our time anyway." "But Susie, I don't think that's going to happen." "How do you know?" "Because when Diane saw me cry in the middle of a coffee shop, she didn't run. She cried too. Sometimes, baby girl, broken people recognize each other. And sometimes they realize they're not broken at all, just waiting for someone else who speaks their language." Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, what Susie called arthritis weather, because the dampness made her joints ache. Frank almost texted Diane to reschedule, but Susie insisted on going. "If Adrian comes and I'm not there, he'll think I didn't want to meet him. I know what that feels like."
They arrived at the community center 5 minutes early. The parking lot was nearly empty. The adaptive sports program wasn't exactly overflowing with participants. Frank was helping Susie into her sports chair when Diane's van pulled up beside them. The lift lowered, and Adrian appeared, wearing a basketball jersey that hung loose on his thin frame. His face was nervous but determined. Susie and Adrian looked at each other across the space between their chairs, sizing each other up with the careful assessment of kids who'd learned to be cautious with their hope. "Hi," Susie said finally. "I'm Susie. I like your jersey." "I'm Adrian. I like your wheels. They're purple." "Purple's the best color." "No way. Blue is." "Purple. Blue." "Want to argue about it while we play basketball?" "Absolutely." And just like that, they were friends. Not inspirational poster friends, not look how brave the disabled kids are friends, but real friends who'd found their person in a world that didn't always make space for them. Frank and Diane stood by the sideline as their kids wheeled onto the court, Adrian still insisting blue was superior, while Susie launched into a passionate defense of purple that involved historical references Frank didn't know she knew. "She's incredible," Diane said softly. "So is he." "No, I mean, she's just a kid being a kid who happens to use wheels sometimes. You've given her that normality within the abnormal. You've done the same for Adrian." They watched Adrian attempt his first basket. The ball missed entirely, bouncing off the backboard support beam. Susie laughed, not mean-spirited, but delighted. "That was terrible," she called out. "Here, watch me be equally terrible." She launched the ball with her stiff fingers. It went backwards. Both kids dissolved in laughter, the kind that comes from finding someone who understands that sometimes you have to laugh or you'll cry, and laughing is so much better. Your text last night, the one that said this was the best first date you'd had in years, I meant it. Even though I ambushed you with Adrian? Especially because you ambushed me with Adrian. Although technically I think we ambushed each other, you with Adrian, me with Susie. Frank turned to face her. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really bring him? The truth." Diane watched Adrian pass the ball to Susie, who caught it against her chest and grinned triumphantly. "Because I'm tired of pretending I'm not a package deal. I'm tired of men who say they're fine with kids but assume Adrian's some normal kid who'll play catch in the yard and grow up to give them grandkids who'll carry on their family name. I'm tired of explaining that my son is brilliant and funny and artistic and worth knowing exactly as he is. So I brought him as a test, a filter, a way to fail fast if we were going to fail. And if I'd failed? Then Adrian and I would have gotten coffee and gone to the science museum like we do most Saturdays. But you didn't fail. You saw him. Really saw him. I saw you both. On the court, Susie was teaching Adrian her signature move, spinning her chair in circles until she was dizzy, then attempting to shoot. It was ridiculous and beautiful and perfect. My ex-wife couldn't handle Susie's condition. She said she didn't sign up for a disabled child, as if any of us sign up for the cards we're dealt. She sends birthday cards, Christmas cards, checks, but she hasn't seen Susie in 2 years. Adrian's father shows up twice a year, takes him to lunch at restaurants without wheelchair access, then gets frustrated when we have to leave. He keeps asking when Adrian will grow out of it, as if paralysis is a phase like teenage rebellion. They're missing everything. Everything that matters. The coach called for a water break. Adrian and Susie wheeled over, faces flushed with exertion and joy. "Mom," Adrian exclaimed, "Susie says there's a telescope at the observatory that I could use from my chair. Frank built it." "Frank didn't build the telescope," Susie corrected with 8-year-old precision. "He built the platform that makes it work for people like us. That's even cooler." "Can we go sometime?" Adrian asked, looking between the adults. "All 4 of us?" Frank and Diane exchanged glances. "I think that could be arranged," Frank said carefully. "Does this mean you're dating?" Susie asked bluntly. "Because Aunt Margaret says you need to date Dad. She says you're becoming a hermit crab, whatever that means." "Susie!" "What? It's true. You only leave the house for work and my appointments. That's not healthy. My therapist says so." "Your therapist is talking to you about my social life." "No, but she asks if you're taking care of yourself too. I told her you eat cereal for dinner when I'm at Aunt Margaret's." Adrian laughed. "Mom eats protein bars and calls it dinner." "Adults are disasters," Susie declared. "We should supervise them." "Agreed," Adrian said solemnly. "Mom, you should date Frank. He understands about the chair and the appointments and the stairs. Plus, he builds cool stuff." "Adrian." "And Dad," Susie added, "you should date Adrian's mom. She runs a whole company and doesn't treat Adrian like he's broken. Plus, she's pretty." Both adults turned red. "Out of the mouths of babes," Diane muttered. "More like out of the mouths of tiny tyrants," Frank replied, but he was smiling. The coach blew the whistle for the game to resume. As the kids wheeled away, Adrian called back, "Frank, will you stay for the whole practice?" "Wouldn't miss it." "Both of you?" Susie added, looking at Diane. "Both of us," Diane confirmed. They spent the next hour on the sideline, not talking much, just existing in the same space. Occasionally, their hands would brush. Once, when Adrian made his first successful basket, Diane grabbed Frank's arm in excitement, then didn't let go for a full minute. "This is nice," she said quietly. "Which part?" "All of it. Watching them be kids, not having to explain or apologize, having someone else who gets it." She paused, "Having you here." Frank wanted to kiss her, right there in the middle of a community center that smelled like old gym socks and industrial cleaner, with their kids playing adaptive basketball badly but enthusiastically. He wanted to kiss this woman who'd walked into a coffee shop armed with her son and her courage and changed everything. Instead, he took her hand properly, interlacing their fingers like their lives were starting to interlace. Complicated and imperfect, but somehow exactly right. "Next Saturday?" he asked. "We'll be here. And maybe dinner after? All 4 of us? I know a place with great ramps, wide aisles, and the best mac and cheese in the city. It's Susie's favorite. Adrian loves mac and cheese. Then it's settled." As practice ended and they helped their kids pack up, the coach pulled Frank and Diane aside. "I just wanted to say," the older woman said, "it's wonderful seeing Susie and Adrian together. We don't get many kids in the program. They tend to age out or give up. But those two, they've got something special. Hold on to that." In the parking lot, as they loaded wheelchairs and tired kids, Adrian asked, "Susie, do we ever wish you weren't—" "Disabled?" Susie supplied matter-of-factly. "Sometimes. But then I think about all the cool people I've met because of it, like you. Regular kids are boring, we're interesting. We're superheroes with wheels instead of capes. Wheels are more practical than capes anyway, Susie said. Frank and Diane stood between their vehicles, reluctant to end this. Thank you, Diane said simply. For what? For seeing Adrian before his chair, for making Susie laugh, for not running. Thank you for being brave enough to show up as you really are, both of you. Same time next week? It's a date. A date or a kids playing basketball date? Frank grinned. Both. As they drove away in opposite directions, Frank's phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Adrian hasn't stopped talking about Susie. He's already planning to teach her about constellations. He replied, Susie's drawing pictures of Adrian's wheelchair to figure out how to make it more aerodynamic for racing. Our kids are going to be troubled together, aren't they? The best kind of trouble. That night, as Frank tucked Susie into bed, careful of her evening stiffness, she said, Dad, I think Mom was wrong. About what, baby? We're not broken. We're just different. And different isn't bad. No, it's not. And Adrian's mom is nice. She didn't look at me like I'm sad or brave or special. She just looked at me like I'm Susie. That's because that's who you are. Just Susie. Exactly Susie. Perfect Susie. Dad? Yeah? Don't mess this up, okay? Frank laughed, kissing her forehead. I'll do my best. Miles away, Diane was having a similar conversation with Adrian. She didn't care about my chair, Mom. She just wanted to know if I liked purple or blue better. That's because she sees you, baby. The real you. And Frank knew about Star Wars in space. No, he didn't. Mom, are you going to marry him? Adrian, we just met. So, when you know, you know. That's what you always say about business decisions. This isn't business. No, Adrian said thoughtfully. It's better. It's family. 3 months later, at the coffee shop where it all began, Frank and Diane sat at the same corner table. This time, they were planning Adrian's 11th birthday party, a space-themed celebration at the observatory that Frank had helped make accessible. Susie wants to give him a telescope, Frank said, showing Diane options on his phone. That's too expensive. She's been saving her allowance for 2 months. She said Adrian needs to see the stars properly if he's going to be an astronomer. Diane's eyes misted. Our kids are pretty amazing. They get it from their parents. Frank? Yeah? The manager is watching us. I think she remembers us from that first day. Frank looked over. The elderly woman behind the counter gave them a knowing smile and a little wave. Should we tell her? Diane asked. Tell her what? That her coffee shop is where 2 broken families became one whole one. Frank lifted Diane's hand, kissing the ring he'd placed there just a week ago, a small ceremony with just their kids, Margaret and Diane's parents, everyone crying happy tears as Susie and Adrian declared themselves officially brother and sister. I think she already knows. And she did. The manager would tell anyone who listened about the day a CEO brought her paralyzed son on a blind date, expecting rejection, but finding love instead. She'd tell them about a single father who cried when he saw the boy, not from pity, but from recognition. She'd tell them about 2 children who became inseparable, who taught each other that different doesn't mean less than. But mostly, she'd tell them about the power of showing up exactly as you are, broken pieces and all, and finding someone who doesn't want to fix you, but wants to build something beautiful with you anyway.
Because sometimes love doesn't look like perfection. Sometimes it looks like wheelchairs and joint braces, adaptive equipment and accessible ramps.
If this story touched your heart, don't leave silently. Subscribe to Souls Connecting Tales and stay with us for more moments that remind us what it means to be human. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Your words might comfort someone who needs them more than you know. And if you felt even a spark of hope today, give this video a like, because sometimes a small act of support can change everything.